The fighting between Israel and Iran is entering a critical new stage, with both sides expanding their targets and the conflict rippling across the region. Meanwhile, military experts believe the Iranian missile supplies are dwindling as U.S. and Israeli forces display relentless firepower. Here's the latest on these and other stories.
In an escalating assault from air and sea, U.S. and Israeli forces continue to strike Iran, Hezbollah bases in Beirut, and Iranian warships in the Persian Gulf and Indian Ocean.
The Iranian Air Force is no more. Built for 1996, destroyed in 2026. The Iranian Navy rests at the bottom of the Persian Gulf.
In all, the administration says 20 Iranian naval vessels have been destroyed. Hexeth says the Iranian leader behind a Trump assassination plot in 2024 has also been eliminated. As plans to strike deeper into Iranian territory continues, the Secretary of War also warns any attempt by Iran to hunker down in an effort to deplete American munitions supplies will fail.
Iran cannot outlast us. As I said, that we set the tone and the tempo of this fight.
Iran has continued its haphazard airstrikes. This missile landed near the Syrian airport, and a U.S. Navy destroyer in the Mediterranean shot down an Iranian missile invading Turkey's airspace. The potential attack on a NATO ally raises the risk of pulling other NATO nations into the war.
Both Israel and the U.S. are hitting around the clock ballistic launchers and missiles, degrading systematically the ability of Iran to shoot missiles and drones. So far, Iran shot 500 ballistic missiles to different countries and 2,000 drones. But every day they shoot less and less.
Missiles simultaneously fired by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard and Hezbollah did hit central Israel Wednesday, with 2 injuries reported. Since the start of the war, 10 Israeli civilians have been killed by Iranian missile strikes. 9 of them died just outside Jerusalem when these homes and the synagogue were hit. Now this breaks your heart. This was once a synagogue. Now this is what's left. Take a look. Burnt out pages of a Hebrew prayer book, a kippah, a Hebrew shawl. People were worshiping here on Sunday when the sirens went off and they took cover. 30 people went inside that bomb shelter. 3 of them died. That's why the rabbi we spoke with says Iran isn't a country, it's a terrorist state.
That is the game plan, and that is the playbook for all terrorists. They go out of their way to target civilians.
In Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei's son is the favorite to succeed his father, who was killed in airstrikes. The Israeli Defense Forces are promising to eliminate whomever is chosen as the next supreme leader. The Jerusalem Post reports hundreds of Kurdish fighters are operating inside Iran territory along the Iraqi border. General Avivi says overall, the Iranian war strategy is clearly backfiring.
The Iranian strategy is to create chaos, try to create pressure on the U.S. by rising prices of oil, and trying to shoot these countries in order for them to pressure the U.S. to stop. It's doing exactly the opposite. More and more countries are joining U.S. and Israel in a coalition that is being formed and growing.
The Secretary of War believes the end result for Iran will be decisive.
They are toast, and they know it.
Paul Petit, CBN News, Bet Shemesh, Israel.
In Washington, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says the United States is prepared for a prolonged confrontation with Iran and has the military resources to sustain it.
We've got no shortage of munitions. Our stockpiles of defensive and offensive weapons allow us to sustain this campaign as long as we need to.
According to Reuters, the joint U.S.-Israeli campaign against Iran is now entering a second phase, focusing on ballistic missile facilities buried deep underground. The war is nearing the end of its first week after initial strikes reportedly killed multiple senior Iranian leaders and sparked a wider regional confrontation, as Iran responded with attacks on Israel and strikes on other countries in the Gulf and Iraq. Israel's ambassador to the United Nations says the international community must recognize the broader threat posed by Tehran.
Iran has struck more Arab countries than Israel has in its entire existence. This is a regime going down and trying to set the entire region on fire as it falls. It will not work.
The Israeli military says it has already destroyed hundreds of Iranian above-ground missile launchers capable of hitting Israeli cities. In a statement yesterday, the Israel Defense Forces issued an evacuation warning to civilians near Tehran ahead of new strikes. Urgent warning to all individuals located in the Abbasabad industrial area and also the Shenzar industrial area near Sharifabad in eastern Pakdasht. In the coming hours, the IDF will operate in the area to strike military infrastructure of the Iranian regime.
We will dismantle them. We will finish this job.
As the conflict widens, Iran is also accused of striking still another country in the region, Israeli ally Azerbaijan.
Today, a terrorist act was committed by Iran against the territory of Azerbaijan and the state of Azerbaijan. The targets of the attack were civilian facilities. The state of Azerbaijan strongly condemns this heinous terrorist act.
A new front could also be forming along Iran's western border. Regional sources say Washington and Jerusalem have quietly approached Kurdish leaders in Iraq and among Iran's Kurdish opposition groups about opening another front against Tehran. Along the mountainous frontier between Iraq and Iran, Kurdish Peshmerga fighters are reportedly mobilizing as American and Israeli airstrikes weaken Iranian positions in the region. Iran has already responded by striking Kurdish headquarters inside Iraqi Kurdistan. Security concerns are also affecting daily life here in Jerusalem. Authorities have temporarily closed the Temple Mount and other holy sites in the Old City to all worshippers from every faith.
The Homefront Command directives called for the temporary closure of holy sites here in the Old City of Jerusalem, including the Western Wall and the Temple Mount. These precautions already proved to be necessary, as we've seen an Iranian warhead land just a few hundred meters from the holy sites only a number of days ago, during Ramadan.
Israel has also targeted Hezbollah positions in Lebanon as tensions are rising along Israel's northern border. Nearly 500,000 Hezbollah supporters evacuated southern Lebanon, while Israeli forces launched 24 attacks in the last 24 hours. Israeli leaders say the coming days could determine whether the war remains contained or pulls more nations into a widening Middle East conflict. Joshua Swanson, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Up next, CBN President Gordon Robertson talks with Israel's ambassador to the U.S., Yakir Leiter.
Scripture calls us to bless Israel. One way is through investing in the nation's thriving economy. With a robust tech sector and expanding infrastructure, the Israeli stock and bond markets enable you to align your portfolio with your faith-based values. Wise Money Israel is believer-staffed, based here in Israel, and provides local insight and guidance to navigate investment in Israel's future.
Visit wisemoneyisrael.com/learn more or scan the QR code to receive a free Investing in Israel guide today.
CBN President Gordon Robertson got an update on the war recently from Israeli Ambassador Yakir Leiter. Here's an excerpt from their conversation on the 700 Club, which you can see in its entirety on YouTube or CBN.com.
What does victory look like for Israel in this? I know we're still sort of early in the war, but it looks like the victory is assured. But what, from your point of view, is victory for Israel?
Victory is the absence of an entity in Tehran, which is a terrorist entity, exporter of terror, where they have no capability of producing nuclear weapons, ballistic missiles, or supporting proxies around the Middle East that destabilize and spread mayhem and murder. That's victory.
Well, after the June attack, I said the real target and the real weapon of war here is the state itself. It's not their nuclear ambition or those facilities that were struck. It's them. They're the architect of Hezbollah, of Hamas, of the Houthis, and until they're removed, you're not ever going to see peace in the Middle East. So, in terms of that victory, is it needed to have boots on the ground, and if so, is Israel prepared to do that?
What's needed are boots on the ground, but Iranian boots. Look, this is very different than Iraq or Afghanistan or really any other war that's taken place over the past decades. The Iranian people want change. 80% of the Iranian people don't identify with this regime. And they're rising up. I mean, we saw what they did last month. Tens of thousands were willing to give their lives for freedom. So boots on the ground will be there, but they're going to come from the Iranian people themselves. Yeah, there are many minorities that have had the boot of the Ayatollahs on their necks now for 47 years, and they're ready to rise up and take charge. And what we need is to move into a phase of a transitional government that will be comprised of the various opposition parties, the various minorities, until they can actually move the country into free and open elections, let's say, in a year's time or so. But the first part of this objective is to bring this regime down. It's regime collapse, not regime change at this point, but regime collapse. Because you can't have Ayatollahs. These people are believers. They believe that everyone across the globe has to come under the boot of their brand of Islam. This is not Venezuela. It's not a bunch of thugs that are selling drugs. These are people who believe that you and I have to change our belief, and if we don't, we have to be subservient to them.
Well, it's interesting that they formed an alliance with Venezuela, and that, you know, what is the influence of this Islamic ideology in the leadership of Venezuela? But leaving that issue aside, just the sheer penetration of the ideology within the country, just as we've seen with Hamas in Gaza, that it just seems the civilian population wants to help them hold captives, wants to help them disguise the tunnels, doesn't seem to have a big problem with the hospitals and the schools being used as fronts, and even, you know, their own children being offered up in sacrifice to this ideology. How deep does it go? I'm hearing reports there are over 2,000 Republican Guard generals. The clerics are trying to elect a new Ayatollah. Is it really possible to change Iran?
It absolutely is. As I said, only 20% of the population identifies with this regime, but 20% in a country of over 90 million people is significant. You know, so yes, they have a huge military edifice, but it's cracking. I mean, the good news this morning, Gordon, is that we're seeing cracks in their chain of command. Once we took off the head of the snake in that initial strike, and we continue to pound them. I mean, as we're talking, IDF jets are pounding Tehran, the command centers of the IRGC, of the internal security apparatus. I mean, they have some 30 organizations that are dedicated to keeping this tyranny over the heads of the Iranians. But once the cracks widen into wider chasms, the opposition is going to coalesce, unify, and hopefully begin to take over the streets. We see it happening, and you know, some indicators are, for example, they have not appointed a successor yet, number one. Number two, they haven't buried Khamenei yet. They're in complete disarray. And the wild fire of missiles around the entire region into their neighbors, into the Gulf states that have become our real allies in this battle against Iran. And they're firing of missiles into Azerbaijan, a country of 10 million Shiite Muslims, into Turkey, into Europe, attacking Cyprus. This is an indication of their beginnings of desperation. So that's actually a good sign.
Well, before you leave, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Also, we would love to hear how the Lord is moving and touching your heart right now. So be sure to comment below and then share this video with someone you feel needs it just as much as you did.